to, what's the name of this? This is called Woodstock's Inspiring Location, Learning from Our Environment. And we've invited 3 amazing people to speak here. But I think to start, I could say that most of you could be on this as a panel, as an authority, because I think from what many of us, the place of the Woodstock is in, the location itself really was key to a part of our formation as in terms of our worldviews, our attitude towards the environment, and for many of us, things we care passionately about, work for, think a lot about. So whether it's, like we were talking about, the juxtaposition between, the hill culture and wherever we came from and where we were living, whether it was the environment that always was in your face, that 24/7, whether it was rain or cicada sounds or leeches on you, or not being able to do things because of the weather, or just being blown away walking up the ramp and seeing the winter light in the autumn. I used to just love watching these teenagers just stop spellbound and look at nature, and just think, where else in the world do kids regularly just drop their jaws because it's so beautiful? And I think that all got into our bones. And for many, there were other things, whether it was fern collections and great mentors for me, again, Dick Wechter and Bud Skillman was amazing, our biology teacher. So lots of reasons that we all could be experts on this. But I wanted to explore just kind of that place-based experience and how it formed people's lives. So I invited 3 people from different areas, kind of. Steve Alter is, as you may know, class of, he was born and raised in Missouri. Along his family also had spent a lot of time in Missouri, his parents. So they're very rooted into that place. And Steve now spends half his time in Oakville and half other places. So he's still very much rooted there. And is an author who writes books many of them are placed in the Himalaya. Are there any that are not placed in the Himalaya? I'm trying to think. No, none that are not placed. Yeah,
but not.
No, yeah. He has also set up the Missouri Mountain Festival, which is brings writers to that area and has really seeded creativity and made that a place on the map. And then Sue Hanifl, who is class of 63, and she went to Woodstock when her father went over to work with the Food and Agriculture, right? Wasn't it the Indian government doing FAO?
USAID, yep.
USAID. And so her family was from farms. She's always been interested in farming and in food and in the environment. And she's been memorialized in the Hanifl Center, which she and her husband Paul helped to fund and have also nurtured in terms of programmatically, as well as expanding into things like the Turner Organic Garden and other things on campus. And then outside of in her life, outside of that, she has just really promoted the similar things, the arts, farming, and how do you say it? Keeping in touch with the land in her other endeavors as well. And then there's Darab, and Darab is class of 80. I knew him in school, and then as also we were on faculty together. And Darab was at Woodstock from 6th grade, yeah? 6th grade on. And went to Northland College, got an environmental science degree, and came back. He made his way back to the Kumon and Nagarwalla area, where he was working with various NGOs trying to do development work in villages and forest development and environmental work in the hills. Luckily, he joined the staff at Woodstock for the Hanifl Center and helped to build the programs at the Hanifl Center. And just recently, about a year ago, left Woodstock. So it has very current kind of experience. 2 years, did you say? 2 years, has very current experience at the school and with the programs there. So we're just gonna have them kind of share their inner souls with us about the environment and Woodstock, and we get to talk about one of our favorite places in the world. And then we'll open it up for questions after they present. So Steve, are you ready to start?
Sure.
Okay, let me get your slides up. Interesting. Sorry, I have 2 screens going, which is too confusing, so I'm getting rid of one screen. Sorry. 1 minute. Yeah.
While you're doing that, I'll just mention that photograph that came up there was taken before anybody brought a drone up to Missouri. It was actually taken of the Hanifl Center. Kuti will remember this. My nephew was going by helicopter up to Uttarkashi, and we organized the helicopter to go over the Hanifl Center in Oakville and go across. And so he got that wonderful picture. Now, of course, the drones do it effortlessly, but that was a fun experiment to get that picture.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay,
Do you need?
think, Nate, do you have it? I mean, I think I
have it, but I don't know what to do with it.
okay, here it is. All right, we got it.
All right, there we go. Good.
All right.
All right, and I'll just keep saying next, Sharon, when
Okay.
it needs to move. Thanks so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. And I, as Sharon said, I think each of us on this Zoom call could be talking about the way Woodstock's location has inspired us and directed us. I'm just going to very briefly talk about some of my perspectives on the Landauer hillside next.
Here you go.
It didn't change. It doesn't change.
Okay. There it goes.
There we go. Everybody recognizes this. And, you know, when we talk about Woodstock's location in the Himalaya, we usually think of it as a part of the entire landscape, the entire panorama of the Himalaya, which of course has affected all of us. But it's also important to remember the location is really this hillside. And when I think about the influence the hillside has had on me, I think about probably the most important classes that I had at Woodstock, which were in 3rd grade and 4th grade. We had something called show and tell. And essentially, as you walked down to class, you looked on the path to see what you could take to class and show and talk about. I often think that I've been doing that for the rest of my life. But this hillside, I think, has so many things on it that evoke stories, evoke memories, of course. And whether it's a cicada husk, the dry skin, whether it's a leech on your ankle, as Sharon mentioned, whether it's a beetle, a stone, or whatever it is. So for me, the location itself has been, of course, an inspiration in terms of the stories I've told about the hillside, but also in a sense, a way of looking at a landscape and looking at a place and going through that process of showing and telling. Next. I put this picture in just for fun because this gives you a sense. This was taken in 7th grade with a couple of my classmates, John Campbell and Mark Davidson. And we were setting off on a hike. And I think that obviously from those early 3rd and 4th grade adventures just on the path to school, we then started to roam a little bit further. And if you'll see, John has a fishing rod on his pack, and the two of us have, unfortunately, pellet guns in our hands. And we were very much out there looking for different things in nature and collecting things from nature as well. Next. One of the places, we didn't go that far, but one of the places we often went to was Flag Hill. And this is a picture of the south side of Flag Hill during the monsoon when it's at its greenest. And as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Flag Hill is now the Jabbercaith Nature Reserve. Vipul Jain, who owns it, who was a classmate of mine in the class of '74, he actually owns that property, and it was turned into the first private wildlife reserve in Uttarakhand. And it's a wonderful initiative. Sejal Vora, who is the sister of another classmate, Swati Vora, is the director of that. So Vipul and Sejal have put this together, and it's a wonderful initiative to protect that forest, but also to inform people, motivate people, and to educate people on the environment at this altitude in the Himalaya. Next.
Hey, Stephen, excuse me.
Yes.
Alan here.
Yes.
Is that the haunted house there?
No, this is the haunted house would be at your back when you're looking at that.
Okay.
This is a small shed that used to be a cow shed, but the haunted house is behind me.
Okay.
This picture is taken.
Those guns you had, are those just pellet guns, or were they 22s?
Aha.
Were they pellet guns or 22s?
Pellet guns, but
Okay.
they were,
That's not so bad.
more lethal than they should have been. But Flag Hill, of course, gets its name from the flags on top, the prayer flags that are there. And part of our exploration, I've always felt, was the natural history of that region and those hills and those mountains, but also, in a sense, an awareness of the spiritual and the perhaps mystical, you might call it, forces, presence that there is in those mountains. Next. The Jabbercaith Nature Reserve, one of the wonderful things that Sejal has put together there is a set of small water holes which have attracted wildlife. And one of the exciting things is that more than 20 mammals have been identified on these water holes. And we have camera traps, which are small cameras that allow the animals to take their own photographs. And I'm just going to share with you 3 photographs. This one is of course, a barking deer, a kakar, and a kalij pheasant that are both drinking at one of the water holes. And the wonderful thing about this is you can take a group of students to walk through Jabbercaith Nature Reserve, and they may not see very much as they're walking through, particularly if it's a largish group. But what you can do is stop at this water hole and take the memory card out of that camera trap, put it in a little tablet, and show the kids what was there the night before, or even a few hours before. And it suddenly motivates students to learn more about that particular environment. And it's very exciting to think, oh, I was standing there and this barking deer was standing there just 8 hours ago. Next.
How do you get the water in there?
Well, that's it. Sejal, one of the things that she was deciding was that she was not going to put in pipes and things. So there's a very enthusiastic young man named Surinder who carries the water up and fills each of these. There's a story. One time he came and told us, he said, they're leaking, and we didn't know what was going on. And we said it couldn't be possible that they're leaking. And then we got videos on the camera traps of a mother bear and her two cubs were coming every night, and the cubs were splashing in the pool and splashing all of the water out. So that answered the question there. Here we have a leopard cat with her two kittens. Leopard cats are a very rare species of cat. They're a little bigger than a house cat. And it was wonderful to see this family on the water hole.
Wow.
Next. This is a bear. This is that mother bear, not with her cubs in this particular shot. But one of the exciting things was when I was a boy, I remember seeing bears up on the mountains. And when Sejal started the Jabba Cake Nature Project, I said to her, you know, the one thing that's not going to come back are bears, because I'm sure they've pretty much disappeared from these mountains. Within about 2 months of setting up the water holes, we had bears coming on a regular basis, and it was wonderful. This is a very large female who's come, obviously, mostly they come after dark. Next.
Wow. Marvelous.
I just have a few photographs here, and the reason for showing these is really to spark memories in each of you and stories from each of you in that process. One of the things in March, of course, when we came to show and tell, somebody or other would arrive with a blossoms from a rhododendron tree. Many of you probably remember collecting them in pillowcases so our mothers would make jams and jellies. Just a beautiful color,
right?
one of the most flamboyant.
Is that right? I took it upon myself to make some jam out of those one time. It was a complete disaster.
Well, I'll admit it's never been my favorite jam. It has a lovely color, and the flavor is kind of subtle, let's put it that way. Next. Here's one of the many exciting butterflies that we have in Missouri, the oak leaf, orange oak leaf butterfly. And as you can see on the left-hand side, when it has its wings closed, it looks like one of the dead oak leaves on the path. And then when it opens its wings, of course, you have this wonderful iridescent purple and orange. And it's one of those butterflies that always takes my breath away when I see it. And is one of those that, you know, you can tell all sorts of stories. It drinks, it doesn't drink nectar. It drinks usually from rotting fruit. And it has to wait until the juice ferments enough so that it can suck it in without its proboscis getting gummed up with the juice. So they get drunk, and they ultimately they fall down drunk in the forest. And fortunately, their wings close, and they don't get noticed until they sober up and then can fly again. Next. This is probably the most common bird in Landauer, the streaked laughing thrush. And but it's one of my favorites because often you'll see it scurrying around in the underbrush. And it really looks like a mouse or a rat in the ground. And I always sort of do a double take on that. But I love this picture because he had obviously caught this caterpillar and was very, very pleased with himself. Next. And this is a gurul, a mountain goat, sometimes called actually a goat antelope. And this is a photograph I took at Jabba Cake Nature Reserve. And I love this photograph partly because of the context in which it was taken. I had gone there looking for a particular plant. There's an insectivorous plant that comes out right at the end of the monsoon. And so my focus was on the ground as I was looking for that plant. And this gurul, a young male, was obviously also, his focus was on the ground, but he was grazing. And we came within about 10 feet of each other. And then we suddenly both looked up, and you can see the look in his eye. I had exactly the same look on my face. And we saw each other for about 20 seconds, long enough for me to get the camera up and take the picture. But this is one of the most common species in the Jabba Cake Nature Reserve. Next. and the stories aren't just limited to natural history. It's also to the human communities, the people of the Himalaya, whose stories also are so much a part of our own. This is a young Gujar herdsman migrating from the Rajaji sanctuary down in Dehradun, heading up towards Dodital and the higher meadows. And this buffalo calf was born on the way, and he has, because the calf couldn't walk the distances that were required every day, he's sort of slung it on his back. And it gives you a sense of how migrant communities adapt and how they are on the move. You can see probably his sister ahead with all the pots and pans loaded onto a horse, and also notice the cell phone in his pocket there, which is also an important part of his life now. This was taken at Siokoli. Next. And the Hanifl Center, as Sharon said earlier, is carrying on the legacy of outdoor education. I would say it's carrying on the legacy of show and tell as well, thanks to the generosity of Suzanne and Paul Hanifl. We have two of the past directors on this call, Darab and Kuti, both of whom helped shape the program that's there, and who really brought it into what it is today, a place where Woodstock students have an opportunity to use the facilities, use the equipment to set off into the mountains. We had all hoped that Akshay Shah, who's the current director, could be on this call. He unfortunately is working at the moment, teaching a Hanifl Center wilderness first aid course at the Indian Mountaineering Foundation in Delhi, and his session went on too late for us to get him onto this call. But he sends his greetings to everyone, and he encourages all alumni when you come back to visit Hanifl Center. And in addition to the wilderness first aid courses and the outdoor leadership courses that Kuti and he put together and started, we now have all of the middle year students are going on hikes, I believe, almost every Friday, and the Hanifl Center is organizing and facilitating that. All of the 11th grade students last year, who are now 12th graders, took the wilderness first aid course and are certified for that. So the Hanifl Center reaches out to the community, to the broader community of outdoor recreation and adventure and tourism, but it very much serves the Woodstock community as well, and is very much the heart and soul of Woodstock's outdoor education program. Akshay also wanted me to remind you that they are organizing an alumni hike from the 22nd of October to the 29th of October, and any alumni who are interested are welcome, and you can find more about that both through the Hanifl Center or through the Advancement and Alumni Relations Office. Next. And since Woodstock Tigers are our theme for this year's reunion, or very much a part of this reunion, I thought I should end with a picture of a tigress. This was a tigress I photographed in central India, far away from the Himalaya. But I was thinking, with all of the discussion we're having these days about gender, maybe the Woodstock tiger now has to become the Woodstock tigress. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Steve. Steve, do you want to just, can I just ask you, when you're coming, you've had a long and very fruitful career writing many books and doing other things as well, teaching, but when you started out, did you think that you were going to focus your writing on the Himalaya? And if not, if so, like what motivates you to set your books there so much?
No, I don't think I started with that, but I think right from the beginning when I began writing, the natural world was very much a part of whatever I was writing. And I wrote mostly fiction, in fact, exclusively fiction for a certain period of time until I started working on nonfiction books. But nature, wildlife was very much a part of the stories. And I've always said that, people usually think of nature writing as nonfiction, memoir, or, natural history, travel, things like that. But I think there's an awful lot of fiction that is nature-based, that has elements of nature as part of the plot, as part of the setting, and the characters themselves. And so, just without trying to push my latest book, Birdwatching, it's very much a character who is an ornithologist, who then ends up being the. So the title is a little bit deceptive. It's not about bird watching, though of course it is. So I find, inevitably, I think the two things that I cannot get away from when I'm writing is one is the question of identity, which we don't have enough time to talk about right here, but is very much a part of Woodstock, and it's what Woodstock loaded us down with, were all these questions of identity. But on top of that is the natural history, the natural world, and that awareness of nature, that awareness of species other than our own, and our connection to those species.
Yeah. Did you have any, who would you say were your mentors growing up at Woodstock in terms of environment, but otherwise as well?
Right. Well, I think Bob Fleming Jr. was very much there when I was in elementary school. What's it called now? I don't know. Anyway, it was elementary school to me. And I remember going with Bob on a walk to Flag Hill. I think I must have been in 4th or 5th grade. And he took us around. And one of the lessons he taught us was, we were, of course, wanting to catch snakes and scorpions and things like that. And so we were turning over every rock as we went along. And Bob told us, he said, yeah, it's okay to turn the rock, but then put it back, because you see those ants there, they've taken a year to build all of those things. And if you leave that rock turned over, they have to start all over again. And so he was not just telling us what bird was what, but also, creating a sense of, I suppose, responsibility is the best word for it. There were, a lot of other mentors. Bob Waltner was there, was my biology teacher. Joe Duvall was there. He was the sponsor for the Woodstock Natural History Society when I was a member of that. Frank Wesley was my art teacher, but he was also a naturalist, and sort of inspired me to look at things on the hillside through an artist's perspective, but also with an eye to the science, the natural history as well. And I guess at the bottom of it, for all of these people, and I keep in touch with Bob Fleming, and he's a storyteller par excellence. I mean, he's one of the best storytellers there is. And I think that the idea that you don't just tell someone the Latin name of a bird, you tell where it comes from, what it does, where it travels, how it lives, what it eats, and then your own experiences with that particular species as well. So the storytelling is such an important part of the whole learning process, even at this age. I find when someone tells me a story, suddenly that species comes to life.
True. Yeah. You do that in bird watching really well. It's fun. Okay. Well, I'm going to move on to Sue Hanifl, and Steve will come back to you with questions, I'm sure. But let's Sue, would you like me to, I'm going to bring up your, I'm going to actually,
I thought you were going to take me last.
you want to go last this? Okay, cello. Let's do last. Okay. Darab.
Sure.
Cello.
Okay. I'm gonna share my screen then. Okay. So I'm a little more recent than Steve is in terms of graduating from Woodstock. But I have an association which, like Steve, has continued over the years, and I just wanted to share some thoughts with you all, and just some glimpses into what I call connecting with natures, because like Steve already spoke about Ansharan, I'd like to speak not just about connecting with the natural world, but also natures in terms of people of different hues. So, let's see. Okay, so the question was about how Woodstock's location, natural environment has shaped me as a person. I was at Woodstock between 1973 and 1980. So I came to Woodstock right after the era of hunting, and the pellet guns that Steve showed were, I think, had already been outlawed by then, but slingshots were very much still around, and the stories were very much still around. So there were three things that came to my mind immediately, and so I've just put them down for you all to read. I don't want to say too much more about it, but I think probably you can all relate to it. So fascination, of course, was one, and then that feeling of a sense of responsibility was another, and also the need to share things which one had picked up along the way. And I think this is not special to me. I think it's probably runs through everyone who's on this call, probably in some way or the other. So as a sixth grader, and at the time when I came to Woodstock, we didn't have a whole lot of other distractions. So hiking and camping kind of became the thing to do on a weekend. I didn't have any pictures of myself as a sixth grader, so I have taken the liberty to show more recent pictures. And what did this hiking and camping actually do for me? Well, first of all, it was a shared spirit of adventure that really attracted me and sort of created my first group of friends when I came to Woodstock. And I think you can see that in these two photographs. So the one on the left is actually my daughter and one of her classmates on a very special hike to Nagarwalla when they were sixth graders. It was a hand-picked group, and they were very excited. They did their own cooking. It was a big challenge. And the one on the right, you can see one of my colleagues, Alan Howard, with a group of very enthusiastic tree climbers there, exploring a new route which we hadn't been on before. And this is actually part of. It's just sort of next door to the Binogue Wildlife Sanctuary in the western part of Missouri. It also brought out a curiosity, great curiosity what was up there, what did it feel like, what did it look like. And of course, deepened a fascination. So, some of the things which always intrigued me were, how can you possibly have a maple tree that doesn't have leaves that look like a maple tree? How can you have a fern that looks like a sickle? And so many other amazing creatures that we had around us. And these photos are just for pure nostalgia. They're nowhere near as good as the ones that Steve showed, but I just felt like I had to show them to you just for pure nostalgia. So of course, the stag beetle is almost like an emblem of growing up in Landau in those days. What we used to call the rock lizards, which are actually the Kashmir agama, and then the banana slugs, which have practically disappeared. And then, of course, the mahseer, which also migrates kind of like salmon do, which is absolutely amazing. And then the crested serpent eagle, which is the only big bird of prey, which actually calls, that we hear very, very, very clearly in Landau, calling as it flies. And so in terms of my life choices, there were two really major experiences that happened with me. They both happened around the same time in 11th grade. First one was when the new road was actually built, the bypass road. There were a lot of really big oak trees cut down, and it was very disturbing for me. And somewhere I just sort of got this feeling that, I would like to try and do something about that. Second was coming back from Dodital in the winter. Just a classmate of mine, Alex Roberts, and we had gone hiking up to Dodital, and on the way back, the bus broke down in Chamba and we were stuck. We had like a combined 5 or 10 rupees in our pocket. We didn't know what to do. Bus had broken down, conductor disappeared. We had no idea what to do. So we decided with our last 5 rupees, we'd get a little barfi and a cup of chai at a mithai shop at the end of the bazaar. And a gentleman who looked like this person in the picture, Ramola ji, he heard us talking and he said, "What's the problem?" He just took us in, cooked dinner for us, let us sleep in his shop, woke us up in the morning, put us on the bus, paid our fare, and said, "Don't worry about it. If you ever pass by this way again, feel free. You can pay me back. Otherwise, it's fine." And I was just really struck by that. So really wanted to, give something back to the kind and hospitable villagers of Uttarakhand. And then there were other things, which really bothered me and struck me. Huge landslips that I heard about, floods, deforestation, which we could see very clearly, forest fires. And after going to college and studying environmental science and coming back, decided to try and do something about it, and started my own NGO, worked with other NGOs, tried to mobilize local villagers around issues like water and forests. And then I got this opportunity to work at the Hanifl Center, and Sharon actually was very instrumental in that. And so I have to thank her, and I have to thank Sue Hanifl for creating this opportunity. And this was something which I just plunged into. At first, I thought I would only be there, a couple of years to recharge my batteries and then go back to working in the villages. But I enjoyed it so much that I stayed. And some of the really fun things that I did was to connect Woodstock students with students from other local schools and plant trees on some barren hillsides, like on Mullingar, and take kids on fern hikes and teach them about ferns, and get them all blown away by how big some of the ferns were. And I couldn't have done this alone. I received a lot of inspiration. Like I said, the opportunity to even work at a place like the Hanifl Center through the generosity of Suzanne and Paul, and so much about ferns from David Wagner and my colleagues. I learned a lot from them, Chris and Diana Taylor, the first directors of the Hanifl Center. And later on, I actually had the chance to go back to college and get a teaching license through the kindness of Jeet Singh and Glenn Conrad really batted for me. So I'm very grateful to both of them and the Winterline Foundation. And what did I get out of this experience? Well, so what I had got out of hiking and camping and just the outdoors and all the encouragement I got from teachers like Dick Wechter, for example, well, I was able to get tremendous joy and satisfaction from communicating that to the students who I interacted with. And I call it the spell of the outdoors because it seriously felt like that to me. You know, it was a spell, and once it got you, you were sort of caught in its web, and you couldn't get out of it. And so learning outdoor skills, of course, was a large part of it. But then there were other things too, you know, and that's where, you know, the idea of interacting with people, learning about how people live in the villages, you know, what their lifestyles are about, how they survive, you know, what do they do for entertainment? So learning about local culture and traditions, crafts like basket making, and local folk dances, and of course learning about farming and food, because that's the very substance of life, isn't it? And the Turner Organic Garden facilitated this. So there you can see a group of 9th graders actually learning about organic farming and trying to actually grow some vegetables down at the Turner Organic Garden. And on the left, you see a picture from Khas Kudaon village, where the maize crop is hung up to dry, and you've got red chilies, and you've got probably, I think, probably foxtail millet drying there on that piece of cloth. So variety of crops being dried and stored. And then, of course, you know, one can't discount the intangible things like the sense of achievement you feel when you've done something that maybe you thought you weren't capable of, like a bunch of 6th graders climbing Nag Tibba, or you know, being able to actually pick up a goat that you've been probably afraid of. And the picture on the right is a group of mostly 11th and 12th graders on the top of Kuari Pass, which was, I think, probably the biggest challenge of that hike. That was on an activity week hike, was actually the drive to get to the place near Joshimath. It was really, really far. It was like 12, 13 hours driving each way. That was probably a bigger challenge than the hiking was, although the pass itself was over 12,000, and there were several ups and downs over the week. And we did cook our own meals, although we did have porters for support. So at least we didn't have to carry all our food ourselves. And not to forget, maybe the most important part of interacting with Woodstock kids and taking them outdoors is just to give them an opportunity to feel that sense of wonder that we felt. And Sharon very much mentioned this, but I found this really, really important, and you can see it in all these photographs. So one of them, the one on the left, is from right near the stagnant pond on the way up to the top of Nag Tibba. The one on the top there is you know, that's Nanda Devi from the top of Kuwari Pass. And the one on the right, believe it or not, is from the ridge above Kaplani, looking at Swargrohini. And then later on, like I mentioned, I had a chance to actually go back to college and get a teaching license. And it was Winterline Foundation and Jeet Singh and Glenn Conrad and others also who batted for me. The principal at the time, Dr. Long, who helped to make this possible. In between, I also had a chance to be an Arctic explorer and do a backpacking trip in Alaska. And I have Steve and my old boss Krishnan Kutty to thank for that. So very grateful to them also for broadening my horizons with that. The picture on the left here shows a group of 3 kids using some vernier sensors, which are some pretty sophisticated little sensors, and actually measuring levels of carbon dioxide, humidity, temperature, and just kind of mapping their environment, learning how to actually create data tables, make graphs. The picture in the middle is actually testing water samples from the Rispana River, which is a highly polluted river running through Dehradun. Testing for phosphates, and actually, using reagents in a portable water quality testing kit. The one on the right is a little lesson on variation, and this is on the Burgoyne campground, just above the Hanifl Center, measuring trees and trying to figure out which side of the tree has more moss and lichens, and which side do the branches bend towards, and trying to figure out the reasons why. And finally, I just wanted to say from all this, to summarize, I just feel like, cross-generational, so that's from people who have come before us, standing on their shoulders, reaching out to the students and younger people and learning from them as well. And then the cross-cultural connections, which are kind of the breadth. So people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, villagers, experts, resource persons, trying to bring all this together and trying to find the sweet spot of how to communicate has, for me, been really important. And this is really what the essence of what I've learned from my time at Woodstock. Thank you very much. You're muted, Sharon.
Thanks, Darab. Thank you so much. And just want to come back with some questions for you, but we have a hard stop in about 10 minutes, and I want to hear from Sue Hanifl, but also I hear that Bob Fleming is on this call as well, so hopefully we'll get a chance to talk to him. But Sue, do you want to talk a little bit about your impact, the impact of Woodstock on you, and why you gave back to the school on
I can basically say ditto to everything that my 2 colleagues have just mentioned, but Steve ended with the tigers, and I just want to say that I went to the Minnesota Zoo to see the Amur tiger, a female who just had 3 cubs. Well, she had 4, 1 didn't make it. As part of the introduction of people, so the cubs will get used to seeing people. They're only 2 months old, and so they only brought in 4 of us. We had to be quiet, etc., and they could smell us, etc. So that was kind of fun, being able to see the tigers. Minnesota Zoo is part of the breeding among zoos, and those 3 cubs are very, very, very well. Their genetics is super, so they will help. Anyway, so on with that. Also with the zoo, we have the Hanifl Wildwoods playground, which was created because so many of us used to play outside until the dinner bell rang or whatever, and now kids don't do that. So we've created a wild woods area in the zoo, which doesn't have all the metal and plastic gyms. It has natural rope ridges and posts to climb on and rocks to jump on. So that's a quick, I'm just going to run through my notes really quick because, you know, I want to hear from some questions. But I think a lot of our memories from all of us, any of us, are from things we did outside. I mean, who remembers? Yeah, you remember playing dominoes or something in the house, but I think most of our memories are outside, climbing trees and sledding in the snow, going to your grandfather's farm, family fishing, planting a garden and getting vegetables and flowers for the house. And as a youngster, I was in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia and with the trees in the mountains. So that was a first really pull towards the nature. Then as an adult after Woodstock, which of course goes with all the things that the Darab and Steve have said, the nature there was phenomenal. Excuse me. But in 1970, Earth Day was started, and that was before I had kids, but I think that became an awareness of the environmental neglect that we had been doing to our country and to the environment. And that I got started volunteering with things with Arbor Day and Earth Day. In our own house in Illinois, I had made an environment for butterflies with lots of milkweed planted around and for birds and everything else. We collected the caterpillars and hatched them into butterflies and launched them off to wherever they were going for their next generation. And to cut it short so we can talk, I think that I am a conservationist versus an environmentalist. So I had to look up those words. Environmentalist is concerned and advocates for the protection of the environment. So yes, I am an environmentalist, but I'm also a conservationist, which is a person who advocates or acts to protect and the preservation of environment and wildlife. Because I think the wildlife is super, super, super important. And as we get more and more animals, birds, etc., that are on the endangered list, I think it's just such a sad thing for our environment because they are super important. The monarch is still endangered. I could go on with different endangered species, but that's just my conclusion. I'm a conservationist. I work with, I support many organizations because I can't physically do a lot of the work myself, but things like the World Wildlife Fund and the Natural Habitat, and just let you know, I'm going up for a polar bear view up in Churchill in October. It was on my bucket list, so I'm doing it now. So I see another form of nature from the deserts to the tundra. So that's it for now.
That's great. Thank you.
Well, you had some pictures of us hiking.
I did. You want to share them?
Oh, that run through those quick. Yeah, as the girls at Woodstock in my time, we were not allowed to go out on the hikes like the boys did. But we went with Miss Biswas, so many of you will remember her.
Can you see the flag? Are you
Pardon?
seeing the flag?
The first one, yep. The prayer
Okay.
flag that was found.
Mrs. Biswas looking very young.
Yes, that's Miss Biswas on the right there. And Carol Sauer and Carol Christie. And I'm not sure who's in the water. And yeah, there was a wedding procession as we were walking on the Ugla Valley.
These are great old pictures. Nagtiba.
Yeah, yeah. So that's Carol Sauer on the left. That's me with that funny pose in the front there. And Vivia Day, I think, in the front. And who's sleeping over there? I can't recognize him. Carol Christie again. She got in the pictures.
I think that's it.
That's the last one? Okay.
Mhm, mhm.
But this was one of the highlights of being at Woodstock, to go out with Miss Biswas.
Yeah, absolutely. Can I, because Bob Fleming is on this call, and I think a lot of people for him symbolize a ton. Bob, would you mind just jumping on and saying hello and whatever else you'd like to say at this time? See if he. Is that gonna, Bob, I'm gonna ask you to unmute.
Is he on video?
No, I don't think so. Not on video. Okay, well, maybe that's not gonna work.
Well, that's too bad.
Yeah, that's too bad. I don't know if everybody is.
Bob unmuted.
Bob, are you there? Well, it was nice to see such a good group here.
Yeah, well,
But-
he just showed up, so maybe he's trying to get on.
Okay.
Maybe not. Okay, yeah, great group. What can I say? I'm assuming I was going to show you pictures of Hanifl Center, but I have a feeling that most of you have seen it. One of the things that I loved about it that I was going to try to get pictures of was it was just an old shed, not a shed. It was a two-story kind of. It was a house. It was a typical stone house with the outhouses, and we had to stay on the same plinth as the house was on because you're not allowed to. It's it's an anti-growth kind of ordinance of the government. So we somehow the architect's command was to make a energy efficient. There's water harvesting. There's the spaces had to be amazing kind of educational inside outside environments, etc. on this plinth that he had no control over how big the building was going to be, where it was going to be situated or anything. So it's just wonderful to watch how it's grown and become part of the school programming and so many other people also using the facilities. So all right, I can probably take one question if somebody wants to ask anybody a question. Just raise your hand or unmute yourself. Ashton Court, yep. Oh, okay. So Rachel says show the pictures. Cello, we'll show the pictures real quick because they're very amazing.
You can show them and maybe a couple of us can ask questions. My question is, what percentage of the students are really getting involved with the Hanifl Center and outdoor education? I'm hoping it's 100%.
Darab, do you want to take that question?
I think I'd probably prefer Steve to talk to that because he's had a recent chat with Akshay, and there's some new things happening which I'm not totally aware of. So I'll let Steve take that.
Yeah, well, I'll just answer very briefly. I mean, Kuti also could speak to this as well. But I think that one of the really encouraging things post-COVID was because of course during COVID nothing was happening, but coming out of that, the fact that the middle years are now every week going out on these walks. So certainly there's 100% going on there. With high school, I think the other thing that I think Greg Cook backed up enthusiastically was getting the 11th graders to have this wilderness first aid course, which isn't just you know, where to put a Band-Aid. It's a whole lot more than that. And it's outdoors, and it's how to respond to crises. Somebody falls down the cud, or, you know, gets violently ill or whatever it may, how do you deal with that when you're out on a trek? And so these are great life skills that can benefit the students. This faculty also have been trained at Hanifl Center over the years. A large number of them took these wilderness first aid courses, which I think is terrific. And that's something that Kuti introduced and stuck with, and really turned into one of the sort of hallmarks of Hanifl Center. So I haven't answered your question, Rachel, completely on that, but what I can say is that it's being well used by the students, and I think that whole component will grow as we move on and as we get out of COVID protocols.
Thank you. I have felt some pressure because the in memoriam video is premiering now that Max Marble has put together. This is a video that honors the people who have passed in our community over the last year. So I want to thank Steve, Suzanne, and Darab for coming on, for sharing amazing pictures, but also just kind of digging deep and sharing why you do what you do. And urge everyone to go over to watch In Memoriam, and then following that, there's some more footage from the school, actually, Rachel, things that are happening now at school. And then we'll have time to talk to Craig Cook about it more. So, and as Ashok says, yes, Hanifl Center is also serving many other schools and institutions, not only coming from outside of India, but also internally as well. And it is a very much of a resource that we have always wanted to share with others. So thank you everybody for coming. And I want to say, I'm happy to let this actually just stay on, but I have to jump off and watch this this In Memoriam. Okay. FWS WOSA.org. Thank you so much.